Dudes, we are in the end game now, and that means we kind of need to put a conclusion to this unguided, unprepared PoE journey. So let's do that, shall we? Let's get into the game then. I have reached the point where realistically I should start checking out some stuff, finding out some things. There are so many things that I don't know about this game. What are endurance charges? Where do I get them from? How exactly do they work? How does armor work in this game? How exactly does chaos resistance work? How do I get enough of it so that I deal with all these things that are killing me when I get poisoned? How do I overcome various obstacles? There are currently, as I'm recording this, there are two bosses I have yet to kill. One is at the end of a temple, which I've figured out how the temple works, and it's a fantastic system. But I've yet to defeat the boss. I've reached it, but I only had one life, and I died. And also, there's a thing on the map screen where you put in different shaped symbols and you get a big boss out of that. And I haven't killed that yet because it has a mirror that reflects damage, and I do a lot of damage. And when I click on it, I die. So I don't know how I fixed that yet. But that's the wonderful thing that I'm taking away from this as we approach the end of this, is I have obstacles in front of me, and getting to them and overcoming them are things that I'm going to be working on and figuring out and trying to get done. But I am going to start checking out some stuff because that's a normal thing to do with any game you're invested in. I'm currently 189 hours, so on the 200-hour cusp of playing PoE with still all this stuff in front of me for a free game, and it is free. As much as people meme on the cost thing, it is a free game. That's extraordinary, and I've had such a wonderful experience with it to get to this point. Overwhelmingly, love this game. Overwhelmingly, I love this game. I have so much fun with it, and I'm going to continue to play it on Twitch for some time, and I'm going to continue to play it off stream as well. But I am at the point now where I'm going to start checking things out and finding out a bit more and getting answers to my questions, which is where the unguided portion of our journey kind of comes to an end. So it's good to put a conclusion on it in terms of a new player experience. So I think the most important thing is, what is the daunting thing with this game after you actually get into it? Because, of course, we talked in the first video about people presenting that talent tree and people going, that's too much, I don't want to play. I felt that as well when people would show me that. I was like, I just can't understand that. It's actually not that bad at all. We tend to fall into the same trap with most massive games, that even minor inefficiencies cause the community to have like a spasm and some sort of adverse reactions. Why did you go that way down the talent tree instead of going this way? You would have gained an extra 2% here, 2% there. Very normal thing, very meta game. That's exactly what I would expect from any community that is invested into a game, regardless of what it is minor inefficiencies and minor things like that are big deals to those guys. But what I have to say to you is, it really doesn't matter for like at least the first 200, probably another 100 hours I could keep going without much issue. The game tells you where your problems are. You're just not sure how to figure them out. And this is where we should move on to the negative aspects that I found about the game. I did talk about one about the story, talk about that a while ago. But what they've not been able to do, despite a ridiculous work cycle that Grinding Gear Games has in terms of putting out new leagues with brand new mechanics, brand new systems that are reasonably good, and coming from a World of Warcraft background, that is like exceptional. Absolutely exceptional that they managed to put all that out every few months. The help menu is there, and it's very useful. It's not kept up to date enough with the amount of stuff they put into the game, and proper search functionality with a lot of what you suddenly discover in the game would go such a long way to helping out players who are not quite ready to jump into, say, a Zizaran's University video yet. They're not quite at that knowledge base where that's going to make sense. Or to just go and start asking questions in streams. Things like basic stuff that you want to find out, like endurance charges. You can find out there they do something defensively and they reduce damage. How does that work? I don't know. Tooltips. Mouse over tooltips would be a godsend in this game, and they're so simple to implement, especially when it comes to resistances. For at least 100 hours, I was not clear on what the resistance system was in the game, because it presents you two values. It has a value that's like 75%, and then it has another one in brackets if you're over that. Now, I figured out that the 75% is the resistance cap. Kind of. And the biggest meme I've had come out of my community with this game is yes but no. Because that is kind of where the convolution of Path of Exile, not difficulty, and I really want to be stressed on this. The game isn't hard. It just has some systems that just aren't explained very well. And that's where the difficulty, which is the wrong word to use, comes in, because you need to check how this thing works. And what it's telling you is, you are at the resistance cap, so your fire resist is 75%, that's the cap. But you have 120 from gear. Really basic, really obvious, which means you can drop some from your gear without actually losing any resistances. A mouse over tooltip for that would be fantastic. A mouse over it, you have X from X resistances, which is the resistance cap, and you have X from out from gear. The same can be said for armor. I'm still not clear how armor works. Things like that would go such a long way, especially now that I've found the simming tool, and our World of Warcraft friends will definitely laugh at me here, Path of Building, which allows you to figure a lot of this stuff out and actually give you real, tangible effects on your character as to how dramatic, and this is why I think it's a little bit awkward and convoluted, how dramatic certain changes are that you just don't realize because they both seem pretty good. And it's that question of, say, if I'm running a bleed build, what's better for me here? Is it 20% more bleed damage? Because if I'm focused on bleeds, that sounds really, really good. Or is it actually picking up something like Impale? And then you plug it into there and you can see there's like a 50,000 DPS difference in choosing those things, which is not insignificant. And that's where you get a little bit stuck because your gut instinct is telling you this should make sense, but it doesn't actually make sense. And that's where they could use a lot of help. Let's talk about one of the things that people really were interested in me trying to figure out. Now, this was one that many, many people are invested in, and that is called the Atlas. And the Atlas is a godsend to this game, because it is a never-ending stream of variety content that has bosses, it constantly upgrades itself, it adds hidden areas, it adds unique items, it adds unique bosses. Every map you do is different, and the way it works is just by giving you a map of a location. Those can be modified to provide all different kinds of affixes and changes to the map in and of itself. Then you can add missions to it, so there's more events that happen in there, along with a lot of random events that can occur and spawn in there, which means some maps you can clear in like a minute and a half, and some maps you're going to spend 20-30 minutes in there doing all the variety of content that is inside there. And you can spend a whole day just pissing around with your maps, because each map you do drops maybe 3 more, and it just expands and expands. And they have a system where if you've got low-level maps and you've got 3 of the same one, you can upgrade it to 1, although there should be a button that automatically does that. You have to go to a vendor and like sell the 3 and take the 3 out. I don't know why they don't have an upgrade button. They have it in other tabs, but by the by, you can do that. But the maps are a never-ending source of content. Alongside the fact that finally a game adds these new mechanics that I talked about 3 months ago. They had something called, let's say, Delve, where you dive down into a mine continuously, following a minecart and browsing around the area, and there's lots of secret passageways, and you get to choose where you want to go. I find Delve really, really fun. Now, when the next League comes out, they have a brand new system that replaces Delve, but they keep Delve in the game, which means if you join the game now, I have a whole bunch of interactable systems that I can play with because they still are relevant. They still work. And you can kind of pick and choose your favorite one to go with. And that's really good. Because if you don't particularly like the new one, you can still use the other one. It's not maybe not as effective and it's not going to be as in your face as the latest one, but it's still there, it's still accessible, and it still provides great things. And because the game is all about, of course, collecting big items, you now have a whole variety of things that you can do. Now, the Atlas itself. The Atlas is a convoluted mess. Now, I want to be careful on this because I know they're making changes to it. Like, people have said to me they're going to be overhauling this thing. And the reason it's convoluted, it's not difficult. The problem is, it's trying to achieve a very simple goal. And that is to provide pathways for Endgame that lead to bosses and lead to you being able to spawn stronger enemies so that you can upgrade that area and then continue on. The actual goal of the Atlas is really, really simple. Its implementation is god-fucking awful. Like, absolutely awful. Because you have to really play and mess around without reading a guide or watching a video of somebody who's figured it all out and explaining it to you. You really have to just throw things at the wall to see what sticks. You might get divine vessels. What does that do? You might get the shapes. You might say, okay, I need 2 watchstone orbs, which have their own talent trees that then spawn a conqueror in that area, but I can move them around at will. So do I then base it on each map and to go there? And kind of, yes. That is the answer. Kind of, yes. Which is not intuitive. It's not intuitive, which is where the problem with it lies. But once you figure it out, or at least I would say I've got it like 85% figured out. Once you figure it out, you can play the game in such a way that you're constantly spawning extra conquerors, which unlock and upgrade areas. You're fighting combo bosses through something called the Maven. There's all these things that are accessible in there, which should just be made simpler. That's all. Because the actual, what it's trying to achieve, like the end goal of the Atlas, is not difficult, and it's actually really good. It's just its implementation is atrociously bad. Really, really, really quite bad. But once you figure that out, and you do have to kind of go, maybe I try this, maybe I try that, maybe that works, or I'm going to go and watch a video and a guide. Because being the central shining star of the game, which is what the Atlas is, that is the end game, and it's really, really good. It's just so unintuitive, and that's a problem they could really figure out and get working on. Because it wouldn't change, and maybe they are implementing that. If they fix that out, I think people would have a way better time, because I have no doubt people who don't want to sit and watch YouTube, or they don't like the personalities that are explaining things to them, who maybe are the best, because obviously YouTube is a cult of personality, or they don't want to read long-winded texts on this is how this part works, this is how this part works, this is how this part works, who don't want to do that will be turned off at that point, or they'll probably end up exactly as World of Warcraft players do, cycling around the easy wash basin, going round and round and round, and kind of being stuck, which is where the problems will come with them having longevity in the game, is they just kind of feel like they're not progressing anywhere and not getting forward. I'll talk about other criticisms I have of the game. There aren't many. You could just use a bit more obvious and simple explanations of certain things, even if it was options. Like the option to hold Alt. If you hold Alt, you have to go in, if you want some, I should be clear on this. If you want clearer descriptions of, say, what your items do, right? Which is a good thing to have. You pick up an item, you're not sure if it's good, and it has some flavor text on it that you don't know what that means. You have to go into the menu, activate advanced tooltips, and then you can hold Alt to get more information about it, which then explains to you what this item does. That should be a default function. Again, a mouse over or something like that to really clearly say, would you like more info? Even a button that's clearly marked that says, would you like more information about this item? Something like that would be amazing, because there's so much information that's locked behind having to hold down the Alt key. And once you learn to do it, you basically just hold down Alt all the time, because you do want that extra information, because you're trying to make a choice, an important choice, because you might be screwing yourself up, and you want to have that extra choice. And perhaps you found something very exciting, but because you don't know what it is, you don't know it's exciting. And so you end up kind of putting it away. And one of the things that I did repeatedly was, if something, certainly before I discovered the extra explanations and holding out Alt, sometimes I would get items, I was like, I have no idea what this thing does. I just don't know. And I can either Google it, which is against the challenge that I'd set myself, or I can ask people, which is again against the challenge that I'd set myself, and I was hoping the game would provide something for me. So I started doing things like going into the help menu, go into the talent tree and use the search function for a word that I didn't understand and see if it pops up, and maybe there's a skill or a talent or something that explains it, or go and see all the skill gems and see if there's something pops up there. And regularly, nothing would appear, and I just didn't understand what it was doing. A good one would be focus. You do 25% more damage while focused. Well, what is focus? I don't know what that is. And at the time, I couldn't check what it was. So I was just kind of, well, I'm not going to take that, even though that might be really good for me, because right now I can't really figure out what that is. Or I have to go through maybe 5 or 6 minutes of messing around to try and figure that out. That's the kind of information I would really like to have more on hand while I was playing the game. That's really where I think the perceived difficulty of this game comes from. Is just it's a little awkward sometimes to hit the information, and it could be solved very, very quickly. I think it would be advantageous to them to have really obvious ways of figuring stuff out and just explaining things to you, and it would add a lot to the game in terms of a single player experience. In order to do that, I really think it would be a great thing, is just to simplify a lot of these systems, because the goals of the systems are very, very simple. They're a power fantasy, and they have fantastic roads to travel down. But some of those roads seem to have roadblocks in front of them, where they're actually the mirages. There's nothing blocking you from figuring it out. But you do need to go and work out elsewhere, or have someone else explain it to you, which is fine. It's an online community. But these are the basic game functions, not really min-maxy functions. right? When it comes to min-maxing stuff, yes, external resources, working together as a community is a wonderful thing to do, and I fully encourage that. Basic game functionality should be explained pretty much in the game, because this is how the game is played, not really on the min-maxy side of doing things. So at this point forward, I'm in a position where I want to start checking some things out, because there are so many things that I don't understand about my own character, even after 200 hours, that I would really like to understand. And there are obstacles in my way that I have an idea about how to get over them, but there's probably a ton of extra resources that I have available to me I simply don't know about, so I'm not using them, which would make my life significantly easier. And therefore I want to find out what they are. What are all my options? I want to see the full menu, not just the specials menu. Does that make sense? I want to see exactly what I have on offer without just sticking to what I know at this point, because we're moving into the high grade territory, and that's where we should be. And it's also something that a normal player would do from the start. I do wish they made it much, much easier in order to check out other builds. I feel very pigeonholed. I've made slow and steady progress to shift my build to something else, but it's relatively similar. So I've moved away from using bleeds into a more of an offensive, straight up melee stack. But there are so many things in the game that I want to check out. And I know people are going to say that's what alts are for. I'm not in a position I want to play an alt yet. I quite like my character. He's not even capped yet. But I would like to try some other skills. I want to try out dual wield, maybe. I kind of want to try out messing around with a shield. But in order to change that, I have to change quite a lot of my talent tree. And that's, even after 200 hours of play, I can move maybe 20 of 100 points. That's not enough to really say, I really want to try this thing out, so I'm going to do that. And I know that if I farm more, yeah, I can do that. But I might change to the build and not like it. I might change the shield and go, oh, this was kind of cool, but it's not really something I enjoy. I kind of want to move back. I don't enjoy it as much as I originally had, so I'd like to go back without having to just re-level and redo a new character. I would like it to be a much simpler way of being able to check out other skills and abilities without, like, relying. I could swap my abilities. Let's say this. I could swap my abilities. I could put in the ability to use a shield, and I can equip a shield, but I don't have the backup talent system to froth it, to flesh that out and to get a real feel of how it works. And similarly, I might not enjoy that, and I'd like to come back rather quickly. At least the way I'm playing right now, I have to buy a lot of orbs, or I have to farm and get lucky a lot, or I have to gamble a lot in order to be able just to test that out. So that's been something I wish was a little bit easier. There are ways of doing it. I want to be clear on that. You can absolutely do that. And with more efficient play, maybe I can do that. But I'm not even capped yet. I'm still learning the game. And I went two-handed axe as a start. I would maybe like to try some other things out and see how they go, because there might be abilities lying around that are really, really fun, and I kind of want to check them out without having to completely swap the class. So I'm talking within the realms of the character of the Marauder I'm playing now. I totally get re-rolling a fresh character to try out a caster or a ranged weapon or something like that. That's on the other side of the tree. That's alt territory. But this is what my character can do, and I'd really like to play around with that a bit more. So that's where I'm at right now in terms of my overall ideas. But what a game. So fun. And it doesn't hold you back that much. And also, it's not that daunting. Once you get messing with this system, you can make mistakes and you aren't punished. Or I didn't even feel remotely punished. People were pointing out problems, but didn't stop me, and it kept me going. So what a great experience this has been. That's kind of it for my PoE coverage for now. I'll certainly come back in later leagues and cover stuff on YouTube. I'm going to be playing it on Twitch a little bit, and I'll be playing it out of hours. But in terms of active YouTube content, this is where we kind of draw the line. It's been a ridiculously good journey. Like, a crazy journey to know that I had all these presuppositions about this type of game based entirely off Diablo 3. And that experience was not good. I didn't enjoy it. I finished it as soon as possible and really put me off the genre. When I looked at Diablo 2 and other similar games, I just thought, it's just, you know, it's the same sort of thing, just dungeon grinding and getting things done. But what I've actually found is there's a full-on journey to be had here. And the fact that they've placed so many goals that you keep going that are difficult, interesting, mechanically sound, has really opened up the idea that there's a huge journey to go on here in order to overcome those obstacles way, way, way before you hit the standard just grind out for more gear in order to overcome the same challenge over and over again. The road to get there is vast and long, and this 3-month cycle of adding new content to the game that they've managed to maintain for so many years is extraordinary. I cannot imagine the workload over at GGG. So I'm I can't recommend it enough for something to drop in. And it's free. And it is free. And I keep stressing this as much as people Pepe laugh at me or whatever. I did everything I wanted to do here without buying anything. I did eventually buy things because, god damn it, the game deserves it, and they're right. They have created efficiency by buying things. Buying stash tabs that make things more efficient is definitely useful. Is it needed? Absolutely not. I was fine with my inventory before I bought some tabs, yet I saw thousands of people spamming me, you need to buy them. You don't need to buy them, but they're there and they're optional, and the game does deserve some support because it gives you all the gameplay for free anyway. I'm totally blown away by PoE. Any World of Warcraft player, I think, who's interested in gear in any way will have such a blast here, and there's so much to learn, even if it looks daunting, and it does look daunting, and the game definitely has issues with explaining itself, but they're not something that can't be overcome with the same amount of research or looking into things that you would do for any game that you were invested in. And that's the important thing. When we get invested in games, we do Google things, we do check subreddits, we do check some videos out on YouTube, and we do learn that little bit more, which is exactly what I did for World of Warcraft for so many years, and so many of you watched. It's not uncommon, and this is an online game. It's one of the things I stress the most is the idea of having to look online for little bits of information makes the community. That's where it forms from. And games like this that are based online expect to have those communities as a resource, and therefore they should be used. Not everything in the game is perfect, and it's never going to be in any game. But what they do is they learn fast and they try and do their best. And right now, they're trying to do a lot for the community because the community's a little unhappy. That's fine. And what the next steps will be, I don't know. But frankly, I'm going to continue to play. I love this game. I had such a blast with it, and the journey I went on with you guys was extraordinary, and I really hope to continue it on. Thank you so much for watching. We have got a number of other companies that have reached out asking, can you do the same sort of thing for us? We need to know. What is the new player game experience like? So you should be very excited on YouTube because that is coming to you soon. All right? Thank you, and goodbye.